The story began in an ordinary high school cafeteria where the main character was found sleeping at a table. His chubby friend arrived carrying 2 lunch trays and attempted to wake him, believing that Gavin was exhausted from staying up late talking to a girl. As Gavin slowly awakened, he wondered about the source of an amazing smell before realizing it was coming from the food in front of him. He immediately became excited and let out a shout, staring at the meal with sparkling eyes. Without hesitation, he began devouring everything like a wild animal. His worried friend warned him to eat slower to avoid choking, but it was too late. Gavin even consumed his friend's portion. After satisfying his hunger, he expressed relief and disbelief that he had actually been reborn. His friend asked if Gavin had been a hungry ghost since he had eaten both portions. Gavin confirmed that he had indeed been reincarnated from a hungry ghost, explaining that he had been in a freezing apocalypse where he had starved to death. The chubby friend, not understanding at all, assumed his behavior was due to being dumped by his girlfriend. Gavin placed a hand on his friend's shoulder and expressed happiness that he was still alive, saying they could start over. Yahello was startled by these words and stated that of course he was alive. When Gavin asked for the date, his friend replied that it was August 8, 2024. Gavin revealed that in half a month, the world would enter an ice age with temperatures dropping to -50 degrees. Yahello thought this was ridiculous and offered to help if his friend was in trouble. When Gavin confirmed he needed help, his friend assured him he could count on him. However, when Gavin asked to borrow $1 billion, Yahello spat out his drink in shock. He asked if Gavin was serious, and when the response was affirmative, he refused immediately, saying that even if he sold his own father, he could not obtain that kind of money. Shamelessly, Gavin asked how much his father would be worth, and Yahello replied 500 million before realizing what he had said and becoming angry. A couple suddenly appeared, with the guy inviting the girl to a private room. Gavin looked at them with a serious expression as the blonde man mentioned going to a private movie theater after dinner. The chubby friend became annoyed and pointed out that the girl was Gavin's girlfriend who was cheating on him. The embarrassed girl asked what her boyfriend was doing there as the couple walked past them. Yahello defended his friend and threw the redhead's ingratitude in her face, but she did not care and said she would not explain anything since it was obvious. Gavin remembered that in the apocalypse, the blonde guy had abandoned her and he had taken her in, treating her like a goddess. However, the ungrateful woman had betrayed him, and his demise had been her fault. When Yahello wanted to leave, Gavin calmly said there was no need to rush. The chubby friend did not understand, saying that just looking at her made him sick. The blonde guy took the opportunity to mock him, calling him a simp who was always chasing after Xenia. The redhead humiliated Gavin, claiming he had been harassing her and that she found him disgusting. Gavin asked if she was done with her show. The blonde guy scoffed, asking if Gavin was going to try his simp routine to win the girl back. Yahello tried to pull his friend away, but Gavin asked for just 5 more minutes. The chubby friend became desperate, not understanding why his friend insisted on staying for that girl. Zach found it amusing and said he would love to see what Gavin could do in 5 minutes. Without hesitation, Gavin slapped him across the face. The redhead was shocked and worried about her new boyfriend while everyone in the cafeteria was stunned. Furious, Zach asked how Gavin dared to hit him. The playboy lunged at him, yelling that he was going to mess him up, but Gavin was faster and landed a kick on him. Yahello became excited by his friend's actions while the girl ran to help her boyfriend on the ground. She threatened her ex, saying he was a dead man for touching the heir of the dragon group. Zach got up and claimed he was a Taekwondo black belt who refused to lose to a punk like him, but Gavin countered with a hook and called him trash. He reflected that the apocalypse had been a disaster but had also taught him how to fight. The chubby friend asked since when his buddy had gotten so tough. The traitor became furious with Gavin and yelled that he would regret this, even having the audacity to tell him to get on his knees and apologize. Out of patience, Gavin slapped her across the face and asked who she thought she was. Zach got up filled with rage and promised to crush Gavin like an ant. Gavin then landed a knee to his stomach and pulled something from inside the guy's jacket, revealing a spray bottle he had taken from his pocket. Zach panicked and told him to give it back. Gavin asked how many girls he had already harmed using that spray. Zack played dumb and tried to grab the object back, but Gavin was faster and sprayed it directly in his face. The blonde guy started screaming in pain while Zia had no idea what was happening. Desperate, Zack told the girl to get away from him and stay far away. The spray began to take effect, and he went after the girl completely out of his mind, starting to rip her dress in front of everyone. Zia desperately tried to cover herself, saying they were in public, but Zack continued his attack as the girl begged for help. Gavin announced that the 5 minutes were up while the chubby friend was shocked by the scene. He explained that it was a potent aphrodisiac that the rich kid had used on his victims. Daniel worried that Zack would call the police, but Gavin told him not to worry because as the heir of the dragon group, Zack was too proud and would want to get revenge personally. The chubby friend understood the logic and agreed that Zack would want to handle this secretly. Leaving the cafeteria behind, Yahello asked what their next destination was. Gavin said they were going to sell the house. Without wasting time, the two headed straight to a real estate agency. The chubby friend mentioned that it was the only inheritance from his parents, but Gavin was determined to sell. With 3 million, he needed to stock up on as many supplies as possible for the apocalypse. Daniel did not understand the rush since house prices were rising, but Gavin ignored him and called him to their next stop. It was time to spend the cash, and their destination was a giant supermarket. Upon arriving, Gavin immediately ordered 1,000 bags of rice, flour, and oil, as well as 10,000 cans of canned food. The employee was shocked by the order and asked if he was sure. Gavin confirmed, and the chubby friend asked if he was opening a grocery store. When Gavin asked if they delivered, the employee said they would take care of everything. Gavin then remembered that Yahello's family owned a warehouse and asked to borrow it, saying he was still going to buy more items. 2 girls from their class saw him and started gossiping about the cheating incident. Ignoring them, Gavin headed to the electronics section and placed more orders. He thought that, in the apocalypse, entertainment would be essential for passing time. The employee was overjoyed and called him the biggest customer of the year. The girls were shocked by the amount of money being spent and wondered how he had so much cash. Gavin continued shopping and asked for more coats to be bagged up. The purple-haired girl was suspicious and questioned if he was really poor since he had already spent 1 million. They concluded that he was a rich kid in disguise and decided to approach him. Gavin thought he was ready for the apocalypse. As the two approached, one of them greeted him with a super friendly attitude. They engaged in small talk and complimented his looks, faking interest. He remembered that, in the past, these two had been thugs who had mugged him in the cold. The girl invited him to grab a bite to eat. To their surprise, he accepted and asked Yahello to take the shopping to the warehouse. The gold diggers celebrated and planned to take their sugar daddy to an expensive restaurant. Gavin went with the two, saying he was starving. The trio arrived at a fancy building where they showed him the place and commented on how expensive the luxury restaurant was. Once inside, one of them asked what he thought of the food. Looking at the menu, Gavin pretended to find everything very expensive. The girls did not care about the price and said they would order if he did not want to. The one with glasses ordered several expensive dishes including caviar, lobster, and prime steak. An hour later, the purple-haired girl was satisfied with the feast and asked how the food was. He said he was going to step out for a bit and headed straight to the restaurant's reception desk. The hostess informed him that the bill was 18,000, but he ignored her and asked them to prepare 100 tables with the same dishes for pickup in 10 days. The receptionist was shocked by the massive order and asked if he was sure. Gavin offered his VIP card and said he could pay for everything in advance. He thought that he had gotten sick of canned food in the apocalypse and wanted to ensure he had good meals. The gold diggers thought he was a cheapskate but sensible for going to pay the bill, already planning to ask him for expensive purses later. The receptionist confirmed the order but mentioned there was still the bill for their table. However, he took his card back and said they could pay their own bill. He reflected that he had spent almost all his money and now needed to take out some loans. Without wasting time, he started looking up loan apps on his phone. He celebrated getting almost 3 million in loans but still wanted more. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was one of the gold-digging girls calling. The annoyed girl asked where he went, and Gavin said something unexpected had come up and he was already heading home. He asked why he should pay the bill. The girl exploded with rage, saying he was the one who had invited them to eat. But he retorted that they were the ones who had dragged him there and ordered everything. They became desperate with the ridiculously expensive bill and did not know what to do. But he reminded them that he had warned them about the price and they had insisted on the most expensive dishes. Furious, the scammer called him a broke loser and said he was a disgrace. To prove he had money, Gavin told her to ask the hostess about the order for 100 tables. The receptionist confirmed the order. With the confirmation, the girl begged him to come back and pay the bill, but he hung up on her, saying he was not going to spoil some idiots. With no money to pay the bill, the two panicked as the receptionist pressured them. The purple-haired one decided to call someone named Hunter to teach Gavin a lesson. After leaving the restaurant, Gavin stopped in front of a lottery store. He remembered that in his past life, he had won the lottery with 5 numbers. With the ticket in hand, he became excited because he just had to wait 2 days for the results. With that, he returned to the warehouse where his friend was waiting. The chubby friend complained about being abandoned, but Gavin promised to take him out for some fun. Yahello still did not understand the reason for spending so much money on supplies. Gavin explained that all of this would save lives in the apocalypse and asked him to trust him. His friend said he did not believe any of it because it sounded crazy, but Gavin assured him that in a few days he would believe everything. Suddenly, a group of bullies showed up and asked for Gavin Clark. He confirmed and asked if they were the goons of Hunter. A bald guy with a baseball bat accused him of messing with the boss's woman. The chubby friend became scared and threatened to call the police if they tried anything. But the thug scoffed and said he would break their legs before the police arrived. However, Gavin said with a smile that there was no need to call the police. The bald guy mocked him, calling him a coward and saying it would be useless anyway. The chubby friend tried to protect him using his father's name, but the thugs said their target was only Gavin and they would not touch the rich kid. Desperate, the friend told Gavin to run while he tried to hold the guy back. One of the goons shoved the chubby friend, and the bald guy attacked with the baseball bat. Daniel screamed his friend's name in terror. However, Gavin easily dodged and said the attack was too slow. He countered with a kick to the stomach, leaving the bald guy completely wrecked. Gavin picked up the bat from the ground and hit him with full force. With the thug on the ground, he shoved the bat in his mouth. Seeing that scene, the other goons were shocked by his strength. He turned to the thugs and challenged all of them to come at him at once. The blond guy became annoyed and ordered his men to attack. Gavin defeated all the goons by himself. The chubby friend's jaw dropped. Unable to believe this was the same Gavin. With all the enemies on the ground, he asked if they had had enough, then demanded 100,000 from each of them as compensation. The thug said that was extortion, but Gavin hit him with the baseball bat and threatened to break everyone's legs if they did not pay up quickly. With that, he obtained 600,000 from the thugs. He reflected that he was not a cruel person, but the apocalypse had changed his mindset. He said he was going to take his friend to the exciting place he had promised. They arrived at a club full of dancing women. The pervert seemed to really enjoy it and thanked Gavin for calming his nerves. Gavin went to the bar and said he was looking for the boss to make a delivery. They were led down a hallway full of security guards. The friend became scared and asked what kind of excitement this was and what they were doing in this strange place. The security guards started saluting their boss and calling him Mr. Lowe. The boss asked what the boys were doing there. With a smile, Gavin introduced himself and said he had heard the old man was receiving some goods. Mr. Lowe found it strange that they were empty-handed and asked where the products were. Gavin pointed to himself and said that the goods were them, which interested the old man. However, the conversation ended, and the boss ordered his armed goons to capture the duo. With guns pointed at them, the chubby friend panicked and tried to use his father's name to get out of there. He desperately asked what this delivery was about, and Gavin revealed that the guy trafficked human organs. Upon hearing this, the chubby friend completely freaked out and yelled that there was no way not to panic at this news. Gavin then challenged the boss and asked if he was afraid to close the deal. He made his offer of 10 million for all the organs in his body, but the old man only offered 5 million, saying the market was down at the moment. Gavin accepted on the condition that he received the cash first and delivered the body in 3 days. Satisfied, the boss ordered a goon to bring the contracts for the two to sign, but they only brought one contract. Gavin pointed to his friend, and the chubby guy yelled that he was not selling anything. However, Gavin insisted that his friend was indeed selling, making him even more desperate. One of the goons forced the chubby guy to sign the contract at gunpoint. Once outside, the outraged friend asked if Gavin was even human for selling him out. He tried to calm his friend down, and the chubby guy remembered that Mr. Lowe was a dangerous gang boss. Gavin became serious and said that in 3 days, the trafficking boss would meet his end. The friend did not believe it, but Gavin invited him to watch the apocalypse arrive. They went to a mansion, and Gavin said he wanted to rent the property. The real estate agent confirmed if it was just that one mansion, and he said yes. The friend did not understand why they were renting a mansion now, but Gavin said there was something good there. He remembered that it was in that mansion where he had met his end in his past life. Determined, he declared that his new life would begin in the same place where the old one had ended. The agent informed him that the owner did not want to rent, but he offered double the price. Even with an offer of 5 times the rent, the woman said it was not a matter of money. Without giving up, Gavin offered 10 times the price with payment in advance. The agent changed her mind immediately and promised to convince the owner no matter what. He said his only condition was that he could renovate the entire house. In the hallway, they saw his ex-girlfriend with her mother, who was encouraging her to win over Zach. The friend wondered what Xania was doing there, and Gavin revealed that Zach had a mansion nearby. The redhead noticed her ex's presence and gave him a look of disgust. She accused him of stalking and said they had not settled the score from last time. The girl's mother intervened and humiliated him, calling him poor with no future. The chubby friend defended his buddy, and the woman freaked out, threatening to get him expelled from school. Gavin scoffed at the overreaction and asked what she had to do with his rental. The ex-girlfriend doubted he had money for the rent, which cost at least $20,000. The agent returned and informed them that the rent was $25,000 a month. The girl's mother was shocked to learn that he had actually rented the mansion. The redhead thought he had done all this to be close to her and told him to give up. Gavin and his friend could not believe the girl's level of delusion. Her mother said $25,000 was nothing and dragged her away. The agent reminded him that the first month's rent would be $250,000, and he agreed to pay immediately. The mother and daughter were in shock at his offer, and the redhead thought it was all an act. Gavin showed the transfer confirmation of $250,000 on his phone. The agent handed over the keys to the mansion and said he could renovate it as he wished. The girl's mother wondered if she had misjudged him and if he was also from a rich family. Gavin asked his friend if he knew the head of the biggest renovation company in the city. He asked his friend to set up a meeting, and the chubby guy did not understand the plan to renovate a rented house. Gavin told him to stop asking questions and set up the meeting, saying he would understand everything by nightfall. The friend managed to schedule the meeting using his father's influence, and Gavin thanked him. He promised to send a truckload of instant noodles as thanks, and the friend complained. He assured him that his father would love the gift and would even praise him for it. They arrived at the renovation company, and the receptionist asked them to wait for the boss. Coincidentally, the ex-girlfriend and her mother were also there for a renovation paid for by Zach. The redhead asked if the two had an appointment and noticed they were there. She once again accused Gavin of stalking and told him to keep dreaming if he thought he would win her over. He was fed up with running into them and wondered why they kept bumping into these idiots. The chubby friend tried to explain that Gavin was also there for a renovation, but the redhead scoffed at him. Gavin introduced himself to the receptionist and said he had an appointment. The mother and daughter doubted he was really there for a renovation and thought he was just showing off. The company boss arrived and asked with whom he had a meeting. The receptionist pointed to Gavin's group, but the two gold diggers intervened. The girl's mother was overjoyed and thought Zach's influence had made the boss come in person. She took the opportunity to humiliate Gavin, saying her daughter was being received by the boss while he waited. The redhead confidently went to greet Mr. Shao, introducing herself. The boss was confused and asked if she had scheduled an appointment with him. The girl became worked up and said yes, but the man did not seem to recognize her. He asked if her name was Gavin Clark, and she replied that her name was Xania. Mr. Shao pushed her aside and told her not to get in the way if she was not Gavin. Gavin introduced himself, and the company boss recognized him instantly. Surprised that he was so young, the boss invited him to talk in private. The girl's mother was completely confused, and the redhead thought it was all because of the rich friend's family. They entered the manager's office to discuss the renovation details. Mr. Shao asked what young friend Gavin wanted to renovate. Gavin said he wanted to renovate a mansion. The boss explained that a mansion renovation was a small job and passed it to a director, but Gavin insisted that Mr. Shao handle the project personally. The man said he was busy and only took on large projects personally. Gavin claimed it was a large project, and the boss asked what the budget was. He said the budget was at least 30 million. Mr. Xiao was shocked by the amount and could barely believe what he heard. He asked if he was sure it was 30 million and not 3. Gavin confirmed the amount. A director entered the room excited to help with the project, but the boss dismissed him and said he would handle it personally. Mr. Xiao asked what Gavin wanted to do with so much money, noting that with that amount he could buy a new mansion. Gavin handed him a roll of paper and said the project's blueprints were in there. Upon seeing the drawings, Mr. Xiao was startled and asked if he was building a bunker. Gavin said the budget might increase and that the only requirement was to finish in half a month. The boss said the project was complex and looked like a war bunker for the apocalypse. Gavin admitted it was for the apocalypse and offered 20 million in advance. Mr. Xiao accepted the challenge and promised to mobilize all resources to finish on time. The chubby friend was shocked at the 35 million expenditure and called him crazy. Gavin said money would be worthless soon, and the friend asked where the cash came from. He revealed that he had taken out 10 million in loans, and the friend hoped the apocalypse story was real. The ex-girlfriend reappeared and asked mockingly how much he had spent to get attention. He became annoyed and said it was none of her business and that he was not trying to get anyone's attention. The girl's mother bragged that her daughter had spent 1 million and said that was real power. The chubby friend joined the conversation and revealed that Gavin had spent 35 million. The redhead and her mother burst out laughing and thought it was a ridiculous joke. Gavin challenged them, asking if they would call him daddy if it were true. The ex-girlfriend said he had sold his house for 3 million and called him a simp. The girl's mother joined the bet and said she would call him daddy if he really spent that much cash. An employee ran after him, saying he had forgotten his contract. Seizing the opportunity, the girl's mother grabbed the paper to expose his lie. However, upon looking at the amount on the contract, her expression changed, and she was in shock. The redhead scoffed and asked if the amount was so small it left her speechless. With a pale face, the mother stammered and confirmed that the amount was 35 million. Desperate, the woman accused him of forging the contract just to show off, but the employee defended the document, saying it was signed by the boss and was legal. Gavin then called in the bet and told her to call him daddy. The old woman refused to honor the bet. Out of patience, Gavin slapped her across the face. The chubby friend cheered on the action, and Gavin told him it was time to leave. Xania, furious with the humiliation, threatened her ex, saying he would pay dearly for this. Later, the two friends arrived at the mansion Gavin had rented for the apocalypse. Completely confused, the chubby friend asked why they had come back and what his plan was. Gavin revealed that he was finally going to prove that the apocalypse was real. The chubby friend thought his buddy was acting strange and was sure he had finally lost his mind. Outside, Yahello complained about the cold and said they had been waiting for 2 hours and nothing had happened. But Gavin looked at his phone and said it was almost time. Suddenly, a shooting star streaked across the sky, and Gavin said it had finally arrived. Daniel did not understand anything and asked if it was just a regular shooting star. Gavin explained that the real apocalypse would only come in half a month, but there were signs like the cold and the stars. The chubby friend panicked and said the shooting star was coming right at them. Gavin reflected that those stars granted abilities and that was why his neighborhood had become a base in the past. He remembered that this star had fallen on the mansion and had been found by a thief in his past life. Desperate, Yahello yelled for them to run because the star was going to hit them head-on, but Gavin braced himself and said this opportunity was his. His buddy tried to stop him and asked if he had gone crazy and wanted to meet his end like that. Ignoring the warning, Gavin opened his arms and was engulfed by the star's light. The chubby friend was terrified and thought his buddy had been crushed and that it was all over. But Gavin re-emerged with an aura of power and said his physical attributes had increased 5-fold. He turned to his friend and asked if he believed him now. Surprised, Daniel stammered and asked if his friend had not died. Gavin replied that not only was he alive, but he had also gained an ability and was stronger. The chubby friend was not convinced and said he did not see a difference, asking how he was stronger. To prove his point, Gavin placed a hand on his shoulder and, with just one hand, easily lifted his friend who weighed over 220 pounds. He asked once more with a smile if his buddy believed him now. Daniel panicked and could not believe he had been lifted so easily with one arm. Gavin then took him to the edge of the roof, leaving the chubby friend terrified. With a scary look, he told his friend to get ready to go down. He simply jumped off the 33-foot-high roof with his friend in tow. The two landed without a single scratch. The chubby friend opened his eyes and was surprised to see that he had survived. Gavin asked again, and the friend gave in and said he believed everything after that jump. Meanwhile, in the mansion next door, the redhead's mother asked what her daughter was looking at through the window. The girl said she had seen the star fall and complained that it would have been better if it had hit her ex. The redhead told her mother that Zach would get revenge on Gavin as soon as he returned. At that moment, the mansion's doorbell rang. The mother answered the door happily, and the blonde guy asked where his girlfriend was. The girl appeared all excited and waved to her boyfriend. The preppy guy grabbed her and said he had missed her these past few days. The mother felt awkward, and the blonde guy became annoyed with her, telling the lady to get out of there. The redhead took the opportunity to share the news and revealed that Gavin had moved into the neighborhood. Zach exploded with rage and asked how he dared to show his face in front of him. The mother added more fuel to the fire, saying he had done it to be close to her daughter. Furious, the blonde guy grabbed his phone and promised he would make Gavin regret it. He called someone named Bao, introducing himself as Zach. The scene cut to a boxing club where one of the boxers was in the ring talking to the playboy. Zach offered $200,000 for the fighter to take care of someone for him. Bao accepted immediately and said the job would be done in 2 hours. In the ring, the fighter said he had a job to do and needed to end the fight quickly. The opponent became annoyed with his arrogance and called him a cocky rookie who was asking for a beating. But the boxer was faster and knocked out the champion with a single precise punch to the chin. The crowd went wild with the victory and hailed the fighter as the new king of boxing. Back at the mansion, Gavin explained what the initial stages of the Ice Age would be like. The chubby friend lamented humanity's fate, and Gavin asked what he was going to do. Totally convinced, Daniel stood up and said he would do whatever his friend said without question. Gavin joked and told him to go back home and sell his own father as he had suggested. The buddy felt awkward and said his father would never believe a story about an apocalypse. Gavin explained that soon money would be worthless and only supplies would truly matter. With that, the chubby friend made up his mind and said he would bankrupt the family even if his father punished him for it. Suddenly, Gavin sensed someone approaching the house. He told his friend to be quiet, and the chubby guy asked nervously what was happening. Gavin revealed that the mansion was surrounded. In front of the house, the fighter Bao and his goons prepared to break down the door and invade. One of the goons was ready to hit the door with a giant sledgehammer, but just as he was about to strike, Gavin kicked the door open with force and knocked the unlucky guy out. Gavin and his friend appeared and asked who these guys were. Bao was surprised and asked if he was a fighter for having noticed their presence. Gavin recognized him instantly and called him by his full name. The boxer was surprised and asked how he knew him. Gavin remembered that, in the apocalypse, this fighter had become a powerful ability user. Bao revealed that Zach had sent him and that he was going to break some of his bones. Gavin told the goon to leave so he would not get hurt. Bao became annoyed by the audacity and lunged at him, but Gavin easily dodged and said the blow was too slow. Surprised by his reflexes, the boxer tried another strike, but Gavin took advantage of the opening and landed a punch to his stomach. The other goons were shocked to see their boss get knocked out. The fighter recovered from the blow and said something was wrong, while Gavin asked if he gave up. The boxer refused to surrender and said no one in the world could make him submit. Out of patience, Gavin landed a kick to his chin. With Bao on the ground, Gavin asked if he had had enough. Even defeated, the boxer insisted he would not surrender and could not believe he had lost. Gavin found this interesting and offered a way to save his sister in exchange for a favor. Bao was shocked to hear this and asked how he knew about his sister's illness. Gavin revealed he knew about the terminal illness and that he fought to pay for her treatment. With renewed hope, Bao asked if he could really save his sister. Gavin said he was the only one who could save her and that it was up to him whether to believe it or not. Bao surrendered immediately and said he believed him because he had defeated him in combat. He asked what mission he must complete. The mission was to go after Zach, give him a beating, and get as much cash as possible from him. Bao remained silent without complaining and called his goons to follow him on the mission. The goon asked if the boss really believed the guy, and Bao said he was his only hope. In the other mansion, Zack thought Gavin was already in the hospital and that it was time to have some fun. With that, he and Xania enjoyed a private moment in the bedroom, but suddenly a loud noise interrupted the mood. The girl's mother became annoyed with the interruption and went to see who was knocking at the door. Upon opening the door, the lady came face to face with Bao and his men and asked who they were. Out of patience, the boxer shoved the woman aside and entered the house with his goons. The lady became furious and yelled at the intruders, asking if they had any manners. Bao, out of patience, simply slapped the woman across the face. The couple came downstairs, and Zack asked Bao if the job had been successfully completed. He offered a card with the 200,000 payment for the dirty work. However, instead of accepting, the boxer landed a hard punch to the rich kid's gut. Zack was shocked and asked why the hired goon was attacking him. Bao pointed at Zack and ordered his men to go at him without mercy. They started kicking the rich kid who was down on the floor. Desperate, the playboy tried to threaten the fighter with the power of his wealthy family. With that, Bao raised his hand and told his men to stop hitting him. Thinking his threat had worked, Zack gloated and said the boxer had made a mistake. Bao then revealed that his new boss had ordered him to be hung up and to continue the beating. Zack became desperate with the crazy order and called the boxer insane. While being dragged away, the rich kid wondered who the so-called boss was and if it could be Gavin. Hung up, the playboy revealed that his transfer limit was 10 million. Bao demanded that he transfer the 10 million immediately. At the mansion, the chubby friend showed Gavin a message he had received on his phone. He told him about a class training session, but Gavin refused the invitation immediately. However, he changed his mind when he learned the location was near North New City. He confirmed he would go, and his cell phone started ringing at that very moment. It was Bao on the phone, letting him know he had gotten the 10 million from Zack. The scene changed to the lottery store. Gavin remembered the ticket and said he needed to check the results to buy more supplies. However, upon checking the ticket, he was shocked because he had not won the lottery. He thought about the butterfly effect but found it impossible since nothing else in the world had changed. With that, he realized he needed to find another way to get cash for supplies. The next day, the students gathered for the college's practical training. Suddenly, the two gold diggers appeared, and one of them asked how he dared to show his face there. Gavin asked why he would not dare to show his face. The one with glasses demanded an explanation and said they had had to work for a month to pay off the bill. Unconcerned, Gavin asked what he had to do with their problem. The girl tried to seduce him and said they would do anything if he paid off their debt. The purple-haired one joined in and offered a night with them in exchange for 20,000. But Gavin turned the tables and asked the two gold diggers to lend him 40,000. The two became furious at the proposal. At this point, Yahello appeared, and Gavin asked why his eyes were swollen. The buddy revealed it was from crying so much to convince his father about the apocalypse. Gavin became excited about his friend's tactic and asked if his plan had worked. But the friend said the plan had not worked because his father had ignored him for hours and then given him a beating. Gavin comforted him and told him not to get discouraged, as even he had taken a while to believe in the apocalypse. Suddenly, a professor appeared and told all the students to get on the bus for the training. Inside the bus, Gavin sat next to his friend. The chubby friend said he was thirsty and asked for water, but Gavin said he had not brought a bottle. Suddenly, the girl sitting next to him offered her bottle. He thanked her and immediately handed the water to Yahello. The girl comforted Gavin about the breakup with his ex and hoped he would get over it soon. He said he was not sad and that he was actually happy to have seen her true colors. She said she had heard that Xania was a gold digger and offered him money, but Gavin refused because he knew the girl's family did not have much. Seeing that scene, the chubby friend realized there was a spark between them, but Gavin told him to shut up. After a while, the bus finally arrived. The counselor told everyone to get off to announce their internship positions. He explained that the internships were divided into 3 floors, with the first being the worst. He started announcing the names of the students who would be on the 3rd floor. The 2 gold diggers celebrated getting the best spot just as Hunter had promised. One of them asked how they would fulfill their promise to him. They looked at the girl who had helped Gavin on the bus, and the purple-haired one said Kiku was perfect because she was from the countryside, had no connections, and was a virgin. The counselor continued the roll call and announced the names of the students for the 2nd floor. Yahello was frustrated because their names had not been called even for the 2nd group. With that, the professor announced that the remaining 3 would go to the 1st floor, the worst of all. Kiku was disappointed and lamented that they would not learn anything useful in that place. The other students mocked them and wondered why Yahello had ended up in the same boat as the two broke guys. Gavin confronted the counselor and asked what the criteria for that decision were. The man said it was a fair decision by the school and that he should not complain about anything. Gavin accused him of lying to his face and called him shameless. The professor became angry and threatened to expel him from school. He tried to justify himself by saying it was fair to put a rich kid and a poor kid in the same place. The chubby friend became furious and revealed in front of everyone that the professor had tried to extort his father. Upon being exposed, the counselor became angry and called him insolent. Yahello showed his phone and said he had a recording of the blackmail to prove it. Suddenly, a guy appeared and said they had crossed the line, accusing them of having no respect for the professor. The two gold diggers also intervened and defended the corrupt professor, saying the trio was ungrateful and that people like them did not even deserve an internship. Gavin became annoyed with the guy and told him to shut up. The bully called him a simp and said he had gone crazy after Xania had dumped him, asking how he dared to talk to him like that. Without hesitation, Gavin landed a punch right in his face. The guy became furious and yelled that he had hit him first, lunging at him, but Gavin blocked the blow with ease. The bully was shocked by his strength and did not understand how he had gotten so strong. Gavin slapped him twice across the face and reminded him that he had told him to leave. Completely scared, the bully told the professor that Gavin had gone crazy. Gavin landed another punch on the guy and asked if he had not heard him. The counselor appeared furious and told Gavin to stop and apologize, but he turned and slapped the corrupt professor across the face without mercy. The chubby friend celebrated and said it was very satisfying to see. The other students were shocked and could not believe he had hit the professor. The counselor threatened him, saying he was expelled from the internship program, but Gavin landed a hook on him and said he did not care. With the two guys on the ground, Gavin called his friend to leave the place. At this point, the chubby friend became worried and asked what would happen to Kiku. Gavin turned and invited the girl to go with them, making her feel awkward. The two gold diggers intervened and said they would take care of her, but the professor only wanted to expel Gavin. They tried to convince Kiku to stay with them, saying Gavin would ruin her future, but the girl said goodbye and told him to be careful. With that, Gavin told his buddy that now it was time to take care of business. They arrived at a giant logistics park, and the friend explained that it was the largest in the province. Yahello asked if the plan was to get supplies from that place and said he thought it was impossible because they would not even be able to get into the place. Gavin saw a hiring sign and called his friend to check it out. He approached and asked the recruiter if they were hiring. The man replied condescendingly that they were only hiring women at the moment. The chubby friend became desperate and asked what they were going to do now. Gavin had an idea and told his friend to go get Kiku to help them. Meanwhile, in the internship office, the group was working hard. The one with glasses told her friend that Hunter had called because Mr. Jang needed a girl right now. With a malicious smile, they decided that Kiku was the perfect girl for the job. The two approached their colleague's desk and asked how she was doing. The happy girl thanked them and said she had learned things she would never see in school. The shrew replied that it was nothing and that was what colleagues did. The purple-haired one asked if she had ever had a boyfriend, and she said no. The one with glasses became excited and offered to set their colleague up with a boyfriend. She refused because she just wanted to work, but the two insisted that a rich boyfriend would bring in more cash. Without giving her a chance to refuse, the two dragged her off to meet the guy. They arrived at a very chic commercial building. Kiku tried to run, but the two said they had already arrived and that the man was a good person. They entered a room and introduced her to a gentleman named Jang, who was waiting for them. The old man with a disgusting smile said the girl looked very pure. The purple-haired one pushed Kiku forward and introduced her to her new boyfriend. Satisfied, the old man paid the two girls 30,000 for their help. The gold diggers said their goodbyes and told him to enjoy himself while the girl begged not to be left behind. But they ignored her and slammed the door in her face, leaving her trapped in the room. The creepy old man approached and offered more money if she served him well. The girl backed away and threatened him, saying she would call the police if he did not let her go. However, Jang said all the security guards were his friends and would not help. Cornered, Kiku begged him to let her go because she just wanted to work in peace. The creepy old man slapped her hand and knocked the phone to the floor. He said it was impossible to escape because no woman had ever left that room unharmed. Lying on the floor, her phone started to ring. It was a call from Gavin. Back at the logistics park, he felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. He took out the device and saw that it was Kiku calling him. He answered the call and asked what had happened. However, on the other end, the creepy old man stepped on the phone and shattered the device into pieces. He told the girl to accept her fate because he was going to make her very successful. Kiku refused and grabbed a potted plant, saying she would rather die than surrender. On the other side of the city, Gavin found it strange that the call had dropped suddenly. He realized something bad had happened to Kiku and decided to rush back there. Meanwhile, the girl defended herself and threw the pot in the creepy old man's direction. The man became furious with the attack and said she did not know what was good for her. He slapped the girl across the face and knocked her to the ground. At the building, the two friends were stopped by a security guard who asked what they were doing there. The chubby friend tried to use his influence, but the guard did not seem to recognize him. Out of patience, Gavin shoved the security guard and told him to get out of the way. He said that Kiku was on the 3rd floor and they were heading straight there. The guard tried to stop them and said Mr. Jang could not be disturbed right now. However, Gavin turned around and said he was Mr. Jang's father, so he did not need to wait. The security guard asked how he could be the boss's father when he was so young. With that, the guard finally realized that something was very wrong. He panicked and started yelling for backup to stop the intruders. Gavin finally reached the 3rd floor. As he exited the elevator, he came face to face with the 2 gold diggers. They were shocked and asked what he was doing in that place, but he asked with a serious face where Kiku was. The purple-haired one said he was not an intern and had no right to ask. Gavin repeated the question with a menacing tone. The girl tried to stand her ground and said this was no place for him to make a scene. Out of patience, he slapped the girl across the face and knocked her to the ground. The one with glasses was outraged and could not believe he had dared to hit her friend. He slapped the other gold digger who also fell to the ground. With both of them on the floor, he asked for the 3rd time where their colleague was. Scared, they pointed to a door and said that Kiku was in Mr. Jang's office. The purple-haired one tried to warn him that the boss was well connected, but Gavin did not care. He kicked the door with all his might to open it. Inside the room, the girl screamed for help while the creepy old man told Gavin to get lost. He told the creepy old man to let the girl go immediately. Irritated, Jang asked if he knew who he was talking to. Unintimidated, Gavin grabbed the old man's finger and started to twist it, making Jang scream in pain. Desperate, the man started screaming and calling for the building's security guards. Gavin became annoyed and landed a kick right in the scumbag's face. He went to Kiku and asked if she was okay. The girl said he had arrived just in time. At that moment, the security guards finally arrived and asked who was causing trouble. The old man got up and ordered his goons to finish off the 2 intruders. The 2 gold diggers celebrated and thought Gavin deserved a beating. Suddenly, one of the security guards flew through the air and hit the 2 girls squarely. In seconds, all the guards were down on the floor, and the girls were shocked. The creepy boss was terrified on the floor and asked what else he wanted from him. Gavin said he would make sure he never thought about women again and landed a blow right in the old man's private parts. With Jang completely finished, Gavin moved to another location and turned to the 2 gold diggers with a terrifying look. Scared, the 2 tried to protect themselves and said he could not hit women. He ignored their plea and slapped the one with glasses across the face. He slapped the purple-haired one and warned that he only had not killed them because they were still useful. He called his friends to leave the building, leaving them completely wrecked on the floor. The gold digger tried to help the boss and said she would call the police, but the creepy old man slapped her and told her to take him to the hospital. He grabbed his phone and called someone for help to put an end to the boy. Outside, Kiku thanked Gavin for his help. He said it was nothing and asked what her plans were for the future. Kiku lamented that she had lost her internship and now did not know how she would get a job. Gavin offered to find a job for the girl. She became excited about the proposal and asked if he could really get her a job. With that, the trio returned to the logistics park where it all began. The girl was surprised and asked if he really wanted her to work there. He confirmed. She commented that the position was for a warehouse manager, and she had a degree in finance. However, Gavin encouraged her, saying that all work was valuable and that she could shine anywhere. The recruiter became annoyed and asked if they were going to take the job because it was almost closing time. With that, Gavin encouraged her to apply, and she agreed to take the job. He said goodbye and told them he would visit her in a few days to see how she was doing. Yahello commented that only a fool like her would accept a security job when she was in finance. However, Gavin said it was precisely because of her foolishness that she had gotten the opportunity. After leaving the logistics park, Gavin said it was time to go home. Suddenly, a gun was pointed at his head, and they were told not to move. It was Mr. Lowe's goons, and the two friends raised their hands and surrendered. The thug warned that the 3 days were up and that now their bodies belonged to the boss. Yahello asked if they were really going with the guys, noting that he could easily defeat them, but Gavin said to go with them because the real show was about to begin. They arrived at an abandoned warehouse, and one of the goons told the two to get out of the van. The terrified chubby friend pointed out that they were in an abandoned factory in the suburbs. One of the goons became annoyed with the delay and told the two to hurry up and get inside. But Gavin turned around quickly and, with a swift move, disarmed the guy and took the gun for himself. He did not think twice and fired a shot right into the middle of the goon's head, taking him out instantly. Seeing this, all the goons went on alert, but he was faster and took them all down with precise shots. The chubby friend's jaw dropped, and he praised him, saying he was an elite marksman. Gavin handed a magazine of bullets to Yahello to defend himself if needed. He remembered that, in the apocalypse, he had had no powers, so he had trained his aim to survive. Yahello held the gun awkwardly and told Gavin he did not know how to use it. Gavin asked if his friend played shooting games, and Yahello proudly replied that he was a pro. With that, Gavin suggested he pretend he was playing one of those games right now to feel more confident. The scene cut to the inside of the warehouse where a truck was parked and several people were unloading goods. Upon seeing the truck, Daniel recognized the Zwei Biotech logo, questioning why one of the world's top 3 biotech corporations would be there. At this point, Gavin revealed that in his past life, Zwei Biotech had been hailed as the savior of humanity. However, he now suspected they were not as simple as they seemed. Suddenly, 2 guards in military uniforms noticed the duo's presence and shouted, asking who was there. However, Gavin was faster and fired his gun, hitting both guards. He approached one of the bodies and took an ID card, confirming that they were indeed Zwei Biotech employees. Inside the warehouse, a blonde woman talked to Mr. Lowe, saying it was a pleasure doing business and that Zwei Biotech was very pleased with the fresh parts he had provided. Mr. Lowe replied that the honor was his and mentioned that 2 more fresh and living parts would arrive soon to complete the set of 6. At that moment, he turned and was surprised to see Gavin and Yahello approaching. With that, he introduced them to the woman as the last 2 parts of the batch, ironically asking if she was satisfied with them being alive and kicking. The woman from Zwei Biotech became intrigued and asked Mr. Lowe why the parts were carrying guns. Mr. Lowe was surprised to realize they were armed, but before he could say anything, Gavin shot him without hesitation. The shot hit Mr. Lowe square in the knee, and he fell screaming in pain, ordering his men to capture them immediately. Gavin opened fire on the goons, taking them all down. Noticing the scene, the woman was impressed by his precise aim, while the injured boss yelled for everyone to get them. Gavin told Yahello to stay hidden and said he would take care of the remaining enemies while continuing to fire at the goons. Furious, Mr. Lowe yelled that in all these years, no one had dared to cause trouble on his turf and ordered his men to crush them since they no longer wanted their organs. Gavin continued to eliminate the goons with insane precision. The remaining guards and the Zwei woman were shocked by his speed and started shooting while yelling to stop him, but all the goons were defeated and fell right at the woman's feet. With all the enemies on the ground, Gavin and his friend approached the 2 survivors, and the woman asked what they wanted. Gavin pointed the gun at them and retorted that he should be the one asking what they wanted there. Mr. Lowe became annoyed with the audacity and questioned if a punk like him was qualified to know their plans. In response, Gavin fired again, hitting the trafficking boss's shoulder. He stared at him coldly and told him to repeat what he had said because now he was listening. On his knees and holding his wounded arm, Mr. Lowe tried to maintain his composure and warned that he did not scare easily, saying the boy had no idea who he was messing with. Gavin turned to Yahello and ordered him to take out the boss, leaving the chubby friend completely shocked by the request. With a cold, serious look, Gavin repeated the order and insisted that he do as he was told. At this point, Mr. Lowe seized the opportunity, grabbed a fallen gun from the floor, and said they could go to hell. However, Yahello was faster and, with his eyes closed, fired his weapon at the trafficking boss. In his final moments, Mr. Lowe was completely stunned as he felt the bullet pierce his forehead. Seeing the boss's body on the ground, the chubby friend panicked and realized he had just taken a person's life. Gavin turned to the Zwei woman, saying Mr. Lowe was trash and that his knowledge did not compare to hers. The surprised woman asked how he knew her name and who he was. He replied that she did not need to know who he was, but if she insisted, she could call him daddy. Hearing the taunt, the woman became furious and yelled at him not to be so insolent. Unfazed, Gavin simply shot her in the leg, and she fell to the ground screaming in pain from the impact. The Zwei biotech executive tried to threaten him, asking if he had thought about the consequences of attacking her, but he ignored her and shot her other leg without hesitation. He approached and said he was not interested in her useless threats. Desperate, the woman begged him not to shoot and revealed that they used the human organs provided by Mr. Lowe for human experiments. Hearing this, he asked what kind of experiments they were conducting. She explained that they were researching human evolution and bioweapons, offering to take him there if he spared her life. With that, Gavin had a flashback of the mantis god of war and realized the creature had been created with these experiments, which had begun even before the apocalypse. The woman was shocked and asked how he could know about such a secret project. At this point, Yahello opened one of the boxes and screamed in horror that it was full of human organs. Seeing the situation, the executive tried to recruit Gavin, offering unimaginable wealth and power if he joined Zwei Biotech, but he refused the offer immediately and said he was not interested. In despair, the woman begged not to be killed and promised she could still be useful. He questioned how she could help him. At this, she tried to seduce him and said she was very good with her mouth, but apparently it did not work because Gavin put a bullet in the woman's head. He scoffed, saying she could not even stop a bullet with her mouth. Afterward, he searched her body and found a VIP access card to the Zwei Biotech headquarters. The scene cut to another location where Mr. Zhang was furious that something had happened at Zwei Biotech and questioned who would be so bold. He said that as an investor, he had the right to know what was happening and that they could not hide it from him. Hunter appeared to meet with him. With a vengeful look, the creepy old man ordered Hunter to take care of a guy named Gavin. He confirmed that he already had a personal problem with Gavin and promised to deliver one of his hands in a few days. Back at the mansion, Mr. Shao reported that the main structure had been reinforced to a level that not even a tank could break through. He detailed that the internal renovation, including ventilation and underground water, would be ready in a week. Gavin thanked him for the hard work. At this point, a woman approached and introduced herself as Aunt Lou from the residence committee to welcome the new neighbor. Gavin introduced himself politely. Soon after, she invited him to join the neighborhood chat group for easier communication. Upon accepting, the woman noticed several cardboard boxes from the construction and asked if she could come in to get them since he probably did not need them anymore. He agreed that he did not need the boxes but explained that it was not convenient for her to enter the house at the moment. However, Aunt Lou insisted and said she would get a cart, forcing Gavin to be firmer and ask her not to delay the construction progress. The woman called him stingy, but Gavin tried to be diplomatic and offered to bring the boxes to her house in a week. However, Aunt Lou refused and demanded the boxes now, afraid that someone else would sell them before she could. Out of patience, Gavin lost his cool and yelled at the woman to just get lost. Shocked by his reaction, the woman confronted him and asked why he, a punk, was cursing at people. With that, he threatened her directly, telling her to get lost or he would give her a good thrashing. As she left, the woman complained about the lack of respect from young people and threatened him, saying he would get what he deserved sooner or later. The scene cut to Zach, who offered $500,000 to a group of goons led by a man called One-Eyed Dragon. The One-Eyed Dragon said the young master was very kind and that as employees of the Dragon Group, it was their duty to serve. However, Zach insisted it was a personal matter and that his only demand was that they make Gavin Clark disappear from the world, leaving no evidence. With an evil smile, the One-Eyed Dragon introduced himself as a professional hitman and guaranteed that Gavin would vanish without a trace that very night. While watching the assassins leave the room, Zach gave a serious look and said that Gavin had no idea of the power behind him and that he could end him with a snap of his fingers. The scene changed to a luxury hotel at night. The One-Eyed Dragon's boss asked if he was sure about this, and the goon confirmed that Gavin was staying in the presidential suite of that hotel. The assassin's boss ordered everyone to stay alert for any movement and not let the boy escape. Meanwhile, inside the suite, Gavin relaxed on the sofa and thought that everything had been going according to plan since he was reborn. He reflected that in 3 days, the most important stage of the plan would begin, and its success would define everything. Suddenly, he noticed a noise coming from outside the room. On the other side of the door, the one-eyed dragon slowly approached the suite with a gun in hand. Noticing the movement, Gavin concluded that it must be the goon sent by Zack and decided to play along with their game. On the other side of the door, Bao heard the invasion plan but realized there was more than one group of enemies approaching the location. At this point, Hunter's gang arrived, and one of the goons underestimated the target. However, Hunter warned him not to be careless, as Gavin had already defeated and robbed another group before. One of Hunter's men showed a tranquilizer gun, assuring the boss that this time they were well prepared for the mission. With that, Hunter gave the final order to his men and told them to beat Gavin to a pulp and then cut off one of his ears to send as proof to Mr. Jang. Inside the suite, Gavin smiled and said the day was getting lively, deciding to have a little fun. He turned off the room's lights. Seeing the lights go out, the one-eyed dragon assumed the target was asleep and ordered his men to storm the room immediately. On the other side, Hunter's gang also saw the lights go out and, with the same assumption, advanced into the suite. The two groups of assassins entered the dark room from opposite sides, unaware of each other's presence. Soon after, the one-eyed dragon noticed movement in the darkness and signaled his men to stop, warning that there was someone ahead. The assassin pointed his gun at Hunter's silhouette and ordered him to stay right where he was, mistaking him for his target. Hunter retorted and said that he was the one who should not move an inch. With that, the one-eyed dragon became annoyed by the audacity and asked how the punk dared to be so arrogant with him. Hunter yelled back, questioning if the other guy had gotten the script wrong since he was supposed to be the one saying that. The one-eyed dragon called him a talker and assured him that he would not leave there alive today. Furious with the arrogance, Hunter complained that the kid acted as if he was also there to kill and ordered his men to eliminate him. On the other side, the one-eyed dragon also lost his patience and yelled for his goons to take out the target. The two groups of assassins started shooting at each other in the darkness, each believing they were fighting the target and his backup. One of the one-eyed dragon's goons warned the boss that the kid had backup and told everyone to grab their weapons. At the same time, one of Hunter's men screamed in desperation that the target had a lot of backup and ordered everyone to open fire from a safe spot. Gavin watched the chaos with a smile and thought about letting the fools play their little games. After the intense shootout, the one-eyed dragon leaned on the light switch, accidentally turning it on, and celebrated finally taking down all the enemies. With the lights on, Hunter, also wounded on the floor, recognized the assassin and asked what the one-eyed dragon was doing there. The one-eyed dragon recognized Hunter Walsh and asked what he was doing there and where the punk Gavin was. Hunter yelled that he was about to ask the same thing, as he was also there to take out the boy. At this point, the two gang leaders realized they had been tricked, and the one-eyed dragon screamed in rage, concluding that Gavin had probably escaped a long time ago. 3 days later, Yahello approached Gavin to give him some news. He asked what had happened. The chubby friend revealed that Counselor Chi Chong-dong had used his connections to get him expelled from school, but Gavin just laughed and said a diploma would be useless in the apocalypse. Yahello insisted that he could not stand the smug look on the counselor's face, who was currently bragging in the class chat group. The confident Gavin said he had a way to deal with him. The class chat was shown where Counselor Chi Chong-dong announced the expulsion of Gavin Clark for disruption and assault, with the bully Wong celebrating and the counselor himself mocking Gavin publicly. Reading the taunting messages in the group, Gavin made a serious face and sent a picture of a middle finger, calling Counselor Chi Chong-dong an idiot in the class group. With that, the professor became furious at the audacity and called him an unemployed bum, threatening him to just wait. Gavin sent a message to all members formally reporting Chi Chong-dong for having a long-term affair with Principal Lee's wife and indicating the meeting places and surveillance footage as proof. Reading the message, Yahello was shocked by the explosive news and asked his friend how he knew all that. Gavin revealed with a smile that in his past life, he and the counselor had been trapped together in the school during the apocalypse, and Chi Chong-dong himself had confessed everything when human morality had collapsed. Desperate, the counselor ordered in the chat for the admin to dissolve the group immediately and threatened anyone who dared to leak the messages. Seeing his panic, Yahello laughed and decided to post the chat logs on the school forum right away. Soon after, Gavin said it was time to go, as they had important business to attend to, leaving the chubby friend curious. At this point, he asked if Yahello's father still did not believe him, and the friend confirmed, saying he was one step away from being committed to a psychiatric hospital. Gavin assured him that after they handled their business, He would go with Yahello to see his father, and then he would finally believe everything. The scene cut to later, and Yahello asked what kind of major event could happen there. Gavin announced that they had arrived at the location. They stopped in front of a house that Yahello observed was considered to be from a wealthy family by the neighborhood standards. Suddenly, a voice from inside the house complained angrily that the booze was gone again. Inside the house was a drunk man sitting in a room full of empty bottles with a young girl trapped in a cage in the corner. The man cast a furious look in the direction of the caged girl, but the girl glared back at him. At this, the man became annoyed by her glare, threw the empty bottle at the cage, and threatened her, saying he would gouge her eyes out if she continued. He called her a brat who was nothing but a liability and complained that he had already spent all the dowry her mother had brought, deciding that he was going to sell her family's house. He revealed with a malicious smile that before selling the house, he would sell her first, as she was worth at least enough for a few drinks. With that, the man opened the cage, grabbed the girl's hair forcefully, and yelled for her to get out. He revealed that he had beaten her mother to death for refusing to buy him drinks and threatened her with the same fate if she dared to disobey him. The girl bit his hand. Furious at her reaction, he raised his hand to strike her and yelled that today she would join her mother. However, before he could attack, the front door was kicked open. At the entrance of the house, Gavin and his friend Yahello appeared with a serious expression, ready for action. The man stood up, still holding the girl, and asked who they were. Gavin replied with the question, asking what he thought. In a flashback, he revealed that this man was Finki, a despicable thug who had gained the hyperspace ability and had become a national hero by transporting supplies for the government at the start of the apocalypse. However, he also remembered that Finki had betrayed everyone by running off with a massive load of supplies, which had resulted in the deaths of 1 million people from hunger and cold. Finally, the flashback showed that Finki had not had a good end, as he had ended up perishing in the claws of an ice demon, causing all the supplies he had stolen to disappear forever. Back in the present, Gavin was surprised to see the girl and thought that he had never heard of her in his past life. With that, Finki mistook them for human traffickers and offered to sell the girl for an extra $100, commenting that a little later he would have beaten her to death. Hearing this, Yahello exploded with rage and called him a beast, leaving Finki confused by the insult. The chubby friend repeated the accusation and said he was worse than a pig or a dog. Finki became annoyed by the hypocrisy and called Yahello a human trafficker who thought he was all high and mighty. However, the friend denied the accusation and said he was not a despicable person like him. Finki threatened him with a bottle and said he was going to crack his skull for causing trouble. Before he could attack, Yahello fired his gun and hit Finki right in the leg. With that, Gavin praised his friend and said his aim was getting better every day. On the floor and holding his wounded leg, Finki asked angrily who the heck they were. Yahello warned that he would not let a scumbag like Finki get away with it. Suddenly, the girl took advantage of the distraction and hit Finki's head with the broken bottle. Seeing the scene, both Gavin and his friend were completely shocked by the girl's action. With his head bleeding, Finki became enraged and called the girl a wench. In disbelief that she had dared to attack him, and without giving him time to react, the girl attacked him again. On the floor and completely injured, Finki threatened her and said he was going to skin her alive for daring to hit him. With a look of pure fury, the girl raised the broken bottle with both hands, ready to deliver the final blow. She started beating him relentlessly, and while Yahello tried to intervene, Gavin stopped him and told him to leave the girl alone. He realized that this was the result of overwhelming hatred and that if they stopped her from venting now, her life would be ruined. With that, the girl continued the brutal attack until the broken bottle was completely covered in blood. With Finki's body on the floor, the girl stood beside him, trembling with rage. Seeing the scene, Yahello was shocked and yelled that he was dead. However, Gavin coldly stated that someone like him had deserved to die. He warned that it was almost time and told his friend to take the girl to clean up and calm down while he went up to the roof. On top of the building, Gavin observed a meteor shower crossing the night sky, with one of them being much larger and brighter than the others. With that, he smiled and thought that the greatest opportunity he could have before the apocalypse had finally arrived. He opened his arms and was completely enveloped in a golden light that descended from the heavens, absorbing the meteor's power. Soon after, he celebrated with a triumphant smile, yelling that he had finally gotten what he was waiting for. With a new ability, he found himself floating in a gigantic hyperspace the size of dozens of football fields, and realized that now he could stock as many supplies as he wanted. Back to reality on the roof, he suddenly heard a buzzing sound coming from the street below and looked back. Looking down, he was surprised to see a police car parked in front of the building. Outside, a handcuffed bald man pointed to the house and told the police that was the place where Funki was going to sell him a girl. With that, the lead officer gave the order for all units to prepare and raid the location. Meanwhile, inside the house, the girl was already clean and in new clothes. Yahello commented that now that she was clean, the little sister was actually very cute. Gavin warned that the authorities were outside, and the chubby friend panicked, remembering that the body and the weapons were still with them. However, he calmed him down and said that while before their only option had been to run, now the story was different. With a subtle gesture, he used his new hyperspace ability and made Funki's body disappear right in front of Yahello, who was shocked by the scene. Soon after, the police kicked the door down and yelled for everyone to freeze. The lead officer pointed his gun at them and asked who Funki was. The bald man said that none of them was Funki. The officer turned to the two guys and asked what they were doing in that place. Gavin introduced himself and lied, saying he was a distant cousin of the girl and had just come to check on her. Yahello also introduced himself and said he was just a classmate who had come along with his friend. The officer knelt to talk to the little girl and, in a gentle tone, asked what her name was. The girl replied that her name was Zixi. At this point, the officer pointed to Gavin and asked Zixi if she really knew him. The girl confirmed his story and said that he was her cousin because her mother had told her about him. Satisfied with the answer, the officer said goodbye and told them to contact him immediately if they had any leads on Funki. Seeing the police leave, Yahello sighed in relief and said they had finally gotten out of that one, suggesting they leave right away. However, as he turned to leave, the girl Zixi stopped him. With that, Yahello realized they had almost forgotten about Zixi and wondered what would happen to her now that Funki was gone. Gavin turned to the girl and asked if she wanted to go with them. Zixi nodded her head and agreed to go with them. Yahello insisted that they take her, and Gavin agreed but warned that he did not support freeloaders. He tested her and asked if she knew how to make instant noodles. With an excited smile, the girl confirmed that she knew how. Gavin agreed and they left together. As they walked down the street, Yahello said he was hungry and suggested they eat hot pot, asking Zixi if she could handle spicy food. The scene cut to 3 days before the apocalypse, with Gavin and Yahello walking towards a luxurious mansion. The chubby friend confessed that he was still a bit scared. However, Gavin reassured him, saying there was nothing to fear and that they needed to convince his father today, one way or another. Inside the mansion, Yahello's father was reading the newspaper and yelled at the two punks to stop talking nonsense and leave. Yahello tried to convince his father, saying that everything Gavin had said was true and that the ice apocalypse would arrive in 3 days. However, the man became annoyed and told them to get out at once, so they did not bother him while he was having his tea. At this point, Gavin used his hyperspace ability and made his teacup disappear from the table. Noticing it was gone, Daniel's father was completely confused and wondered where his tea had gone. Gavin revealed that he was the one who had taken it and that this was the superpower he had been talking about. The chubby guy's father, however, was not convinced and accused him of doing magic tricks to try to fool him. Gavin used his ability again and made the sofa disappear, making Daniel's father fall to the floor. Soon after, he approached him and asked if he finally believed his story. Daniel's father refused to believe it and accused them of trying to trick him, stating that they were too naive to pull one over on him. Gavin activated his hyperspace ability again, making the chubby guy's father fall through the floor. However, the man was still not convinced and challenged him, saying he would only believe it if he could make everything in the room disappear. Without hesitation, Gavin used his ability again and made all the furniture in the room vanish in an instant, leaving the place completely empty. The chubby guy's father was in disbelief as Gavin asked with a smile if he finally believed now. Suddenly, The man turned and slapped his own son hard across the face. Completely confused, the chubby friend held his face and asked his father why he had hit him like that. The father explained that he had done it to make sure he was not dreaming and finally said that now he believed everything. The scene cut to another location, and there were only 2 days left until the ice apocalypse. A message appeared showing a transfer notification for 760 million. With that, Yahello appeared all excited and said that his father had finally transferred the money as agreed. Gavin told them to split up and sent his friend to focus on buying cold weather gear and other supplies for the apocalypse while he went to inspect the mansion and try to buy some weapons. The scene cut to the newly renovated mansion, which now looked like a true impenetrable fortress. Soon after, Mr. Xiao appeared and informed him that the entire construction and renovation of the mansion had been completed exactly according to his specifications and asked if he was satisfied. With a smile on his face, Gavin replied that he was very satisfied and praised the renovation company's boss for having thought of everything. Mr. Xiao explained that this had been the most difficult renovation project his company had ever done and that he had personally supervised the entire process, ensuring that with enough supplies, one could live there until they died. At this point, Gavin shook his hand and promised to transfer the final payment as soon as possible. Mr. Xiao said his goodbyes and prepared to leave. However, as the company boss was leaving, Gavin called him one more time to give him a final warning. He advised him not to leave his house for the next 2 days and to stock up on as much food and supplies as he could. Mr. Xiao was curious about the warning and asked if a typhoon was coming. Gavin confirmed that it was a super typhoon that only happened once every century. With that, the renovation company's boss agreed to listen to him, saying that since he had been exhausted lately, it would be a good chance to rest for a few days. Soon after, several huge trucks arrived and parked in front of the mansion, bringing a massive amount of supplies. At this point, the chubby friend appeared in one of the trucks and announced that he was back with the supplies, assuring him that he had bought the best and most expensive things he could find. Gavin told him to bring everything inside the mansion so he could store all the items in his hyperspace. Outside, a woman and her grandson watched the scene, and she wondered why they had bought so many things, questioning if they were going to open a supermarket at home. Seeing one of the boxes, her grandson pointed to a picture of candy and asked his grandmother for a lollipop. The grandmother agreed and picked him up so he could grab a lollipop from the top of the supply box. Suddenly, Yahello approached Gavin with a worried look and said he had run into a problem, leaving him curious. The chubby friend desperately complained that the problem was not being able to spend all the money, as he had not even spent 100 million of the total. With that, Gavin gave his friend a new mission and said he would give him the addresses of some large granaries for him to go and buy all the grain he could find there. In a flashback, he remembered that in his past life, the grain from those granaries had been stolen by a group of villains, and he was determined to cut off their evil path this time. Suddenly, one of the delivery guys approached and informed him that there was a final batch of crossbows they could not move because an elderly lady would not let them pass. Arriving at the location, they found Aunt Lou trying to open one of the boxes with a box cutter while her impatient grandson yelled for her to hurry up, as he wanted to eat what was inside now. At this point, Gavin appeared behind her with a serious expression and asked what she was doing. The woman turned and, with a fake smile, said that since he had bought so many things, her grandson wanted a lollipop and asked if he minded. However, he glared at her with a cold look and replied directly that yes, he minded. Aunt Lou became annoyed and called him stingy, saying that taking a lollipop would serve as an apology for what had happened last time, and still demanded that he leave all the boxes for her to take. Out of patience, Gavin told her to just get lost and leave. Furious, the woman became worked up and said that as the vice director of the neighborhood committee, she could take things from anyone's house and accused him of ruining the neighborhood's harmony. Suddenly, her grandson climbed onto one of the boxes and celebrated having gotten the lollipop. With that, Gavin lost his patience completely and yelled at the woman to get her grandson off the box immediately. However, the spoiled brat refused to get down, called him a villain, and threatened to destroy him in the name of the monsters. He rolled up his sleeves and yelled at the brat to get down from there right now. However, the old woman stopped him and told him to stay far away from her and her grandson. However, while jumping on the box, its lid gave way, and he ended up falling inside. Unfortunately for him, that box was full of crossbow bolts, and several of them ended up sticking in his backside. Feeling the pain of the bolts, The boy started screaming desperately that it hurt a lot. The grandmother ran to pick him up while the grandson continued to cry and complain about the pain in his backside. Watching the scene with a satisfied smile, Gavin simply said that they had had it coming. Furious, Aunt Lou threatened him, saying she had hurt her grandson and would have to be compensated, vowing to come back to settle the score. With that, she left with her grandson while he watched the scene. In the distance, his ex-girlfriend Xania and a friend observed everything from a balcony. The redhead questioned what Gavin was doing buying so many supplies. At this point, Xania's best friend, Yangza King, commented that he was crazy for stocking up on so much stuff in the heat and wondered if he was not afraid of it all spoiling. The ex-girlfriend told them not to worry because Zach would take care of him, and then invited her friend to go to the beauty salon. The scene cut to the logistics park, and it was one day before the apocalypse. There, the chubby friend celebrated that all the money had been spent on buying 5 entire granaries, an amount of food that would last forever. Soon after, Gavin told his friend that after meeting with Kiku, the first thing they would do was collect all the grain. Upon finding the girl, she greeted Gavin happily, and he asked how her work at the logistics park had been for the past few days. Kiku replied that the work was great and that she had even been promoted to warehouse supervisor, but she asked how much longer she needed to stay there. Gavin informed her that she could leave tomorrow, and the girl became super excited about the news, saying she would quit immediately. However, he stopped her and said she did not need to quit because he needed her to do one last thing for him. With that, he revealed that he needed her help to get the warehouse keys because he was going to the logistics park that very night. Hearing that, the girl was shocked by the request and asked what he was thinking of doing by going there in the middle of the night. He said he would tell her everything later and asked her to wait for him inside the warehouse, leaving the girl even more confused. He told her to remember to wait for him and not to tell anyone about the plan. Kiku became thoughtful and started to suspect his true intentions. Later, at one of the granaries, a man informed Gavin and his friend that all the food they had bought was already there for inspection. Inside the huge warehouse, he dismissed the site manager and said his people would take care of everything from there. Soon after the man left, Yahello celebrated excitedly and said that now that they were alone, it was time to start. Gavin activated his hyperspace ability and prepared to collect and store all the supplies from the granary. Inside his hyperspace, the chubby friend was amazed and said it was incredible how all that food had disappeared in an instant. Gavin explained that any item that entered the hyperspace would remain in the exact same state. With that, Yahello asked if that meant the flow of time in the hyperspace was 0. Gavin admitted he was not sure and would need to research it later. Suddenly, the site manager returned to the granary and said he had come back to get something he had forgotten. However, upon entering the warehouse, he was completely shocked by what he found inside. He could not believe what he was seeing and wondered if he was hallucinating, as a mountain of food had simply vanished in a moment. After emptying the granaries, Gavin went to the logistics park and knocked on the door of the warehouse where Kiku was waiting for him. The girl opened the door and was surprised to see him, greeting him a bit awkwardly. He warned her that what she was about to see might be shocking, but that she could not make a sound. The girl agreed. He asked if she was ready and announced that he was going to start. Kiku apparently misunderstood everything and closed her eyes, completely embarrassed. Noticing that she was distracted, he called her and told her to stop daydreaming and follow him. With that, Kiku snapped out of it and ran to keep up with Gavin. They stopped in front of the gigantic warehouse shelves, which were completely packed with supplies. He extended his hand and thought that after collecting this batch, the amount of resources he had accumulated would reach an astronomical figure. Everything simply vanished from there. Seeing the shelves magically emptying, Kiku panicked and screamed, asking what the heck was happening. With the warehouse completely empty, the girl turned to Gavin and asked how the goods had disappeared and if he was the one who had done it. He said he would explain everything later, but that first they needed to go collect the goods from the other warehouses. The scene cut to the surveillance room of the logistics park. Inside the surveillance room, Kiku was confused and asked him what they were doing in that place. With that, Gavin used his ability and, with a single gesture, disabled all the security cameras in the logistics park at once. Soon after, he said he would explain everything when they got back and called her to finally leave the place. The scene cut to his mansion, showing the refuge already prepared for the night before the apocalypse. In the living room, little Zixi served a cup of tea to Kiku, who thanked the little girl for her kindness. Gavin asked if Kiku believed the story about the apocalypse he had told her, and she confirmed that she believed him. Hearing that, Yahello commented with a smile that she really had unconditional trust in Gavin. He announced to the group that the apocalypse began tomorrow and that from that moment on, no one was allowed to leave the house. However, Kiku said she needed to go out to take care of one last thing, and he allowed it on the condition that she returned before noon tomorrow. The scene changed to a large building as the countdown to the ice apocalypse finally reached 0 days. In Zach's office, the one-eyed dragon explained that they had encountered another group sent to take out Gavin and had ended up in a friendly fire incident, promising it would not happen again. With that, Zach became annoyed and said his patience had run out with so many failures. The playboy decided to handle the matter personally and grabbed a gun, calling his goons to go with him. The scene cut to Kiku, who was on a street feeding several stray cats and dogs as her last task before the apocalypse. She said goodbye to the animals and warned that the apocalypse was coming and she would not be able to feed them anymore, asking them to learn to take care of themselves. Soon after, the girl said goodbye to them and said she hoped she could see them all again someday. At the same time, Zach and the one-eyed dragon watched her from a distance, with the goon reporting that Gavin had been staying in the mansion and it had been difficult to act. At this point, the one-eyed dragon suggested that the girl must be his girlfriend and that they could kidnap her to force him to show up. Back at the mansion, Yahello answered a call and completely panicked at the news he received. He ran to Gavin and warned that the scumbag Zach had captured Kiku and was demanding that he go there alone to rescue her. Hearing the news, he became furious and said that Zach was courting his own doom and that it seemed he would not live to see the apocalypse. The scene cut to an abandoned factory. With that, Gavin arrived at the location, and Zach taunted him, calling him an idiot for daring to show up there alone. However, he told him to cut the crap and demanded that he release Kiku first. Zach ordered his goons to release the girl, who was pushed towards Gavin. Upon being released, Kiku ran desperately towards him to protect herself. However, the playboy called him naive and shot the girl. Seeing the shot coming towards her, Kiku panicked, but Gavin was faster and pulled her close to him, managing to dodge the bullet by a hair's breadth. Seeing the scene, Zach could not believe they had managed to dodge the shot. With the girl in his arms, Gavin asked if she was okay. Kiku warned that the enemies had guns and told him to run. However, he reassured her with a smile and told her not to be afraid because he would take care of the rest. He turned to Zach and said he had intended to let him live a few more days, but now he was going to finish him off sooner than expected. Furious, the playboy ordered his men to torture him for a while and not let him die so easily. With that, one of the goons advanced, promising Zach that he would take care of him. However, Gavin knocked him out, throwing him against the wall, and asked if he had come there to die. Seeing the scene, the other goons were shocked by his strength, not understanding what had happened. Soon after, the one-eyed dragon sent more men to attack, and 2 of them charged at him with full force. Gavin dodged with ease and, with a swift move, grabbed the enemy's arm and neutralized the knife with his bare hands. He turned the knife against the goon and stabbed him in the leg. Soon after, he turned and stabbed the other 2 goons in the legs with the knife, taking them down while they screamed in pain. Seeing the scene, Kiku was completely shocked and could not believe that Gavin was so strong. With that, Zach panicked and did not understand how he had these skills. However, the one-eyed dragon calmed him down and reminded him that they still had guns. The one-eyed dragon pointed the gun at him and challenged him, saying that if he was so tough, he should try to dodge that bullet. However, before he could shoot, the goon was hit by a shot to the chest and was completely stunned. With a victorious smile, Gavin revealed that he also had a gun and that he had been faster on the draw. Seeing the one-eyed dragon's body on the floor, Zach panicked and could not believe what had happened. Kiku was horrified to realize that he had just taken a person's life right in front of her. Completely terrified, Zach turned and started to run to escape from that place as fast as possible. However, Gavin fired his gun and hit the playboy in the leg, preventing him from escaping. With him on the ground, he approached and ironically asked if he really thought he could get away. Desperate, Zach tried to use his influence and yelled that he was the heir of the dragon group and that Gavin could not touch him. However, he ignored the threat and shot his other leg without hesitation. With that, he replied coldly that he had just touched him, showing that he was not afraid at all. Realizing he had lost, Zach admitted defeat and told him to name his price. Gavin demanded the absurd amount of 1 trillion. The playboy was completely shocked when he heard that impossible demand. Soon after, he became angry and accused him of joking, as no one could pay 1 trillion. At this point, Gavin called him poor for not being able to pay and kicked him in the face to teach him a lesson. Completely defeated, the playboy started to beg for mercy and asked him to stop hitting him. But Gavin ignored him and continued the beating, while yelling that he had warned him he would finish off that coward today. Suddenly, a police car arrived at the scene, and one of the officers yelled for everyone to freeze and not move. Gavin grabbed Zach by the collar and asked if he was the one who had called the police. The playboy confirmed with a smug smile that he had called them as a plan B. The rich kid bragged that now Gavin could not kill him and that he would still spend the rest of his life in prison for public assault. Out of patience, Gavin simply shot the playboy's private parts. The preppy guy started to scream in pain and cried that he had crushed his jewels and ruined his happiness. At that moment, the police approached and told him to stop and drop the weapon, but he explained that he was not going to kill Zach because that would be too easy. Soon after, he turned to the police and assured them that he would not be caught no matter what. With the police ordering his arrest, Gavin raised his hands in a sign of surrender. He started a countdown and finished by saying that time was up. At this point, one of the officers pointing a gun at him was completely shocked to realize it was snowing. All the officers looked up and were dumbfounded to see the snow falling, wondering how that was possible. One of them questioned what was happening and why it was snowing in the middle of summer. The scene showed the sunny sky being overtaken by a sudden snowstorm as the weather began to change drastically. With that, the police officers started to shiver violently and yelled that it was freezing because the temperature was dropping rapidly. At the same time, one of the injured goons panicked and asked for help, realizing that his wounds were freezing due to the extreme cold. Zach also started to freeze on the ground and begged for help, saying he was going to freeze to death. However, Gavin watched him with a victorious smile.